You see, in life, principle is something you follow even when you don't feel like. For you to have a principle in life, you do it whether you like it or not. You have to follow what is there. And in nature, science itself gave us several principles. And one of the principles that I'm thrilled to introduce to you today is about Archimedes. For those of us who have studied physics, understand that Archimedes was one of the best scientists who said that a body, mass, and fluid experiences an equal upward force. You see, Archimedes in his principle, I don't know how true it is because I'm not a scientist, though I tried to be one. But for the scientists will agree with me that every weight a mass in body is it disperse or dismerges an equal amount of water to its weight. That's a principle. And when Archimedes says that fluids experience an upward force once emerged, it is true that sin pushes us down. It makes us submerged. But this upward force from Archimedes says that lifts up beings, rather objects, is the grace that God gives us to lift us up. It is the buoyancy that sustains us from drowning. Have you ever found yourself drowning in guilt? Have you ever found yourself drowning in guilt? Have you ever found yourself being so much into secret sin and you feel the weight that is bringing you down? Have you ever found yourself in situations that you don't even understand? You feel like saying, today I will quit it, but tomorrow it is so difficult to overcome it. But what the principle of Archimedes says is that there is grace that lifts us up when we are drowning. God begins to lift us up when we are drowning in guilt. He begins to lift up when we are in the secrets of sin. That's how grace works. And as I was looking, I looked and saw there is something about law of inertia. I don't know. Well, law of inertia was somehow brought about by Newton. This guy called Isaac Newton brought 3 laws of motion. There was the first law of motion, the second law of motion, the third law of motion. And all along we find that life has its own principles. There is a way at which life continues because principles have been set. Principles. Friends, when you wake up in the morning, you must have a principle that you have to follow. You don't just wake up and think that I should do this, but rather you tell yourself, no, there is a principle that I have to follow. What do you do when your principle is broken? What can we do when Archimedes says that objects must continue floating and now they are not floating? What do we do? You see, the scientists say that a drum is beaten for people to gather. And what is God's drum? We shall look at it in a few. A drum is beaten for people to gather. And the question I'm asking today is, what is a drum from God? The book of 2 Samuel chapter 14 verse 29. 2 Samuel chapter 14 verse 29. 2 Samuel chapter 14 verse 29. What does the Bible say? The Bible says that therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king. but he will have not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he will not come. Verse 30, therefore he said unto his servants, see, Job's field is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set barley on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom and unto his house, and said unto him, wherefore have your servants set my field on fire? You see, this is Absalom calling for this man called Joab. Absalom was the son to the king, and Joab was the chief, rather was the commander-in-chief of the forces. And when a prince calls for a commander, you guys, who should come? Should the commander respond to the prince, or should the commander just ignore as he did? You see, for the commander, he said that he is not employed by the prince, but rather the master. And he chose not to obey the calling of Absalom, the prince. What happened next is that Absalom, for the second time, he sent his people to go and get this man called Joab. But Joab alikuwa ameweka masikio nta. We call it blocking your ears, building walls on your ears. And Joab didn't bother listening to the call of Absalom. And for the third time, still he didn't listen. Until now, Joab looks for a solution, and he says, go and burn his barley. Go and burn his barley. And friends, when the barley is set on fire, Absalom, and rather Joab now comes calling to Absalom, man, why did you do this? Why did you do this to me? And Absalom, I'm sure he was ready to ask him, I called for you, where were you? Wakati nilitumana ulikuwa wapi? Yaani natumana hiyo yote uitwa, wewe unakataa kuja. Unadhani hapa ni kwa mama yako, you know? Because he is the prince, guys. Friends, what happens is that a drum is beaten unto Joab's home, so that he gathers at the Absalom's place. Were it not for the burning of the field, we could not have seen Joab respond to the calling of Absalom. What psalmist is telling us is that before the tribulations, we could not respond to the call of God. He says, before I was afflicted, I went astray. But now, after being afflicted, now I am into your law. That's the principle of God. The principle of God, rather the drum of God, is to bring trouble and tribulation so that you may be shaken and remember where you ought to be. Joab didn't notice that the calling of Absalom. He didn't notice that the prince is calling. But what did the prince do? He went on to set the barley on fire, and now hunger has stricken. What do you do? Rather, God has a way of sending trouble and tribulation so that you respond to his call. But now, if you don't respond to God's whisper, what does he do? He causes punishment and calamity. The principle of God is to understand that unless you accept the situation and come back to him, there will be no change whatsoever. You see, for transformation to occur in our lives, that requires divine intervention. The same God that allows affliction is the same God who restores you to return. Don't ask me why God allows this to be. He allows it to be because he says, you have went astray for too long, come back to him. And he who sends affliction is the same who restores you in return. What do you do? What do you do when God calls you home? What do you do when God tells you to leave masturbation and come back to where you should be, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do when God tells you to leave that illicit promiscuity and you are busy in that situation? He sends a breakup for your heart to understand and your body to be shaken until you cry all night, not because you wished it to be so, but because of your promiscuity, so that you can come back to Him. Do you remember when you were put in some WhatsApp group to contribute for someone and you didn't even bother knowing what was there? You just clicked the left button and you left. God sent you to that hospital bed so that nobody comes to your watch until you understand that social gatherings are equally important. You cannot be added to a WhatsApp group and leave immediately. Are you normal? You are just stuck in a cycle of, oh, mimi najiweza. Wewe ni nothing. Until you understand that you require us. You require us. Leave alone how black we look. You require us. I'm saying wewe unatuhitaji sisi. We are living in a situation that I call the monkey behavior. The monkey behavior whereby you can jump from one tree to another without thinking. But when the branches fall off, you start blaming God. At least you remembered there is God when the branches started falling off. At least you remembered. That's the principle that He works with. That is His principle. That He says, when I was afflicted, hey, psalmist. So for God's people to remember there is God, they must be afflicted. If Joab's field could not be burnt down, he could not remember that Absalom was calling. If God could not have rendered that landlord the padlock to lock his door, you could not have known that there is a provider in heaven who gives rent. If somehow the student portal could not have found its way to be locked, you could not have known that there is a God who speaks to the relatives in your remote village who didn't speak to you 10 years ago. He works with bringing trouble so that he may also restore you to whatever nature he wants you to become. The same God who brings affliction is the same God who restores it. But what do we feel? We feel the weight of the consequence. Friends, today I'm charging us that don't feel the weight of the consequence. The principle of God is very clear. He sends affliction to bring us home. He does not waste the pain in us, but he lets the pain to push us back to him. He lets the pain to stir our hearts back to where we should be. He lets that affliction bring to your mind and understand that this is not the end, but I should go back to him for transformation to occur in this life. But what happens to your life? What happens to your life? When sin brings you down, remember that the grace abounds more, because he says he afflicts you so that you may remember that there is a God in heaven. If the children of Israel could not be punished for 400 years, they could not understand that there is a God who turns bitter waters to become sweet waters. Unless you become jobless, you will never appreciate the moment jobs are given. Unless you become sick, that you will not understand the healing power that the Heavenly Father possesses in heaven. Unless you undergo single for too long, You won't understand how privileged you become when he gives you the right person. You won't understand.